It's Wednesday, and you're listening to Warlock Wednesday on anyotherpodcast.com.
And good evening, interwebs, and welcome to another edition of Warlock Hour with Rayzor. And I got probably a big show, but we'll see how the talking goes. I want to get things kick-started with comics. Got some comics coming out this week, and on Wednesday we've got from Detective Comics, or DC, as it is now known, Detective Comics number 16, which is part of the Death of the Family series. This series is ongoing. We're wrapping up next month with Batman number 17, but we still have a few more to go to get there, and I'm looking forward to how this is all going to play out this series. So, new Death of the Family series, Detective Comics number 16, continuing that storyline. Also from DC, Action Comics, Batwing, and Green Arrow, all issues number 16 out this week. From Marvel, some of the top titles are Fantastic Four number 3, which is part of their Marvel Now campaign, Secret Avengers number 36, Thor, God of Thunder, number 4, again, part of the Now campaign, rather. Wolverine and the X-Men, number 23, and more Now campaign comics, X-Men Legacy, number 4, and, of course, Superior Spider-Man, number 1. Now, if you all remember last week, we had issue number 700 of... that was 2 weeks ago. We had issue number 700 of Amazing Spider-Man, which ended Peter Parker as Spider-Man in that universe, in that particular comic. It is now Dr. Octavius, Otto Octavius, who's inside, his mind is inside Peter Parker, and this is his story, so to speak. So Superior Spider-Man is Otto Octavius inside Peter Parker's body, and doing good as Spider-Man, or so we hope, as it is a Spider-Man, so it's a character that is supposed to be doing good. I'm not sure if I'm going to be checking it out, but I may pick up issue number 1 just to see how things are. From the other comics that aren't Marvel or DC, from Dark Horse this week, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 9, number 17, and also Star Wars number 1. Now, this is one of the last few things that Dark Horse Comics is going to get to do with Star Wars. As we said, they've got just over a year before the rights for the Star Wars comics will revert to Marvel due to Marvel buying out Lucasfilm, and that included all properties dealing with Star Wars, and they will have Marvel, who is their comic company, because Disney bought them out about a couple of years ago, so now they have them both. But this series basically is going to take place between Star Wars A New Hope and Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. So it's going to deal with like Luke, Leia, and Han and what happened in between those two movies. So this might be a checkout for all you Star Wars fans out there. Like I said, Dark Horse is going to be wrapping up their Star Wars run within the next year, so this is probably a nice collection to get if you want to start a Star Wars collection from Dark Horse Comics. From Dynamite Entertainment, Army of Darkness number 8. From IDW Publishing, Doctor Who number 4, and something that is interesting to me, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret History of the Foot Clan number 1. This is a mini-series which I believe is 4 issues long, so there'll only be 4 issues in the series, but Secret History of the Foot Clan, it sounds kind of intriguing to me. I might check that out as well. So those are the comic releases for the week. Now I have a little bit of comic news. I was just reading online recently, this is posted today, that the Marvel Now campaign that has been ongoing since about November, they have released a teaser, and all it shows is 2 big X's and the DNA helix in the background, which it's just XX and the helix. So the creative team, which is going to be Brian Wood as the writer, and Olivier Copiel, I might be pronouncing that wrong, as the artist. They're going to be starting this series in April. With a little article I read, I'm going to just read a little bit of it. With 2 X's and some nice DNA strands, it sure seems that this has something to do with X-Men, or maybe it's X-Women. After all, 2 X's in a DNA strand symbolize a female, not a male, and Wood has previously been known to write some strong women in series like Demo, Loco, New York 4, DMZ, and pretty much every other title he's worked on. what it goes on to say is Wood recently wrapped up his run on the adjectiveless X-Men title. So just X-Men, not Uncanny X-Men, not X-Men Legacy, not Wolverine and the X-Men, not any other the other descriptive words that go with X-Men, but just X-Men. He wrapped up his run, which is his final issue will come out in February, which leaves about 2 months before XX, whatever this is going to entail, comes out. Some rumors say that it could be Storm and Rogue. I'm not sure on that. I think that's just people pure conjecture at this point. We'll have to see where it goes, but this was announced today that there is going to be a new X-Men, or what looks like it could be a new X-Men title, just XX. That's all we've got. Just a teaser. Want to put that out there for all you fans of the new Marvel Now series, or Marvel in general, or even X-Men in general. I personally would love to see a strong female comic from Marvel. We don't get too many. I mean, we have definite strong ones in the DC universe, so let's get some strong ones maybe now in the Marvel universe. Also with comic news, kind of wrapping up 2012, looking at market shares, which companies kind of hold the most shares, which companies are kind of leading the industry, and it looks like Marvel is leading the industry right now. The shares suggest that they are number one, but before I get to that, the number one comic of 2012 was actually Walking Dead number 100 best-selling comic of the year. So that's pretty huge. Just to read the article that goes with this, you cannot deny the powers of multimedia. An Avengers film, an X-Men film, a Spider-Man film, and the Walking Dead TV series helped some impressive performances from Marvel and Image, dominating the top 10. Marvel Now helped. The Walking Dead number 100 being the best-selling comic helped. And with Marvel taking the next 9 spots as a mixture of their other issues, the Uncanny Avengers, Avengers vs. X-Men, Amazing Spider-Man, and Amazing Spider-Man number 1 and Avengers number 1, which beat out all new X-Men number 1 for the top 10. Basically, Image had the number 1 spot because of Walking Dead, and then it was basically almost all Marvel. So Image and Marvel were like the top 2 selling, had the top 10 or most of the top 10 covered when it came to selling comics this year. So if you look at the numbers then, market share, there's retail market share and unit market share. Marvel has 34.06 of the total comic market. DC second at 31.94, then of course the drop-off. Image at 7.31, IDW Publishing at 5.5, and Dark Horse at 4.8. Just going to do the top 5, because then it just gets smaller and smaller from there. So as you can see, Marvel and DC still dominate. They're in the 30s, and then Image, IDW, and Dark Horse kind of round out the top 5. And switching to unit, it's pretty much the same thing. Marvel at 37, DC at 36, Image at 6, IDW at 4, and Dark Horse at 3. So pretty much the same when it comes to that. When you look at the overall 2012 versus 2011, the amount of percentage increase in dollars for comics was 14.9%. It's almost 15% increase, which is pretty darn good. So I was saying earlier about the top 10 comics. Here they are, and you'll notice that I was actually wrong. It's not just that they dominated the top 10. Marvel was the top 10, with the exception of the number 1 comic. The Walking Dead, number 100, number 1. Number 2, Uncanny Avengers, number 1. Number 3, Avengers vs. X-Men, number 1. Number 4, Amazing Spider-Man, number 700. This is amazing since it just came out right at the end of the year. Number 5 was Avengers vs. X-Men, number 2. Number 6 was Avengers vs. X-Men, number 6. Number 7 was Avengers vs. X-Men, number 5. Number 8 was Avengers vs. X-Men number 3. Number 9 was Avengers vs. X-Men number 4. So you can see how that whole series dominated the top 10. And then in number 10, Avengers number 1, which was the new version Avengers, so to speak. So that was your top 10 comics. The Marvel DC battle still goes on. Image trying to cut into those chunks of pie, and The Walking Dead has definitely helped that. So with that being said, it looks like that Marvel and DC have some competition, yet still will dominate the market. The increase of 14% in money made from comics is very good because comics in general seem to be on the decline, but I think these movies that have come out recently have sparked new interest. As much as a lot of people don't like reboots and reimaginings and all the other stuff that comes with restarting a title, retconning it as they sometimes call it. The New 52, it's been over a year now. You either have to accept it or move on. Either you're gonna read comics or you're not. Being in a lot of comic chats, and especially on Facebook, I have a comic group that this has come up over and over and over again, how issues keep renumbering and they restart from number one, a lot of people don't like it. Well, unfortunately, that's part of the game. It would be fiscally irresponsible for a comic company like Marvel or DC to not try to bring in new blood. By new blood, I mean new readers. They need new readers because the old readers, either they're not buying comics as much anymore, there's a lot of online stuff now, they're not out there reading the comics anymore because maybe they got older and they kind of grew out of it. Personally, I don't think you could ever grow out of comics. I know a lot of people in their 50s and 60s that still read comic books. Comic books are, yes, multi-generational, but they're still, their core market is still going to be between 12 and 25-year-old males. That's your core market. So when companies like Marvel and DC and even some of the independents have to restart their number ones, or what DC did was basically reboot the entire universe, they do it to try and attract new readership. Now, obviously, this has been working with the increase in dollars. It's not a huge increase, but it is an increase. That means people are out there buying comics. They've done their jobs. Now, Marvel now started late November, or sorry, probably a little bit before that, but November was really their big launch, and they're going to have more issues coming out as we get towards the beginning of 2013 here. But the overall of Marvel now will have to be seen as we progress into the next year. So that being said, you're not going to notice any increase from Marvel Now as much, although we did see Uncanny Avengers on there, which is part of the Marvel Now campaign, and we did see, what else was on from Marvel Now? Avengers #1. So we did see 2 titles in the top 10 from the Marvel Now campaign, and all the Avengers vs. X-Men series, well, that wasn't part of the Marvel Now campaign. That entire series, that entire event, led into what is now the Marvel Now universe. That's not to say that the other parts of Marvel have been rebooted or retconned or whatever. There's still a lot of issues and a lot of titles that are still going to be continued from where they are. They're not going to be rebooted. Marvel Now gave them an opportunity to kind of put new characters out there, like Hawkeye and Gambit have their own comics now. Captain Marvel's been rebooted as Carol Danvers is Captain Marvel now. She's not Miss Marvel anymore. I'm really loving that series, actually, so that is one series that I enjoy. There is so much that comics have done in the last year, and when you add in the success of the Batman trilogy that Nolan did, when you add in the success of the Avengers, which was huge money, I mean, you've got comic book movies coming out every year now. It's not like in the past when comic book movies would come out maybe every 4 or 5 years, 3 years at the least. Now you have comic book movies coming out all the time. You've got the Walking Dead TV series, which has helped that comic very much grow, which obviously pushed Image Comics into the top 3. I mean, it is definitely a comic/nerd world out there now, and by showing how the economy of comics grows, maybe this is an indication of how we can possibly get out of the recession and depression, or whatever you want to call it, financial crisis that we've been in. If comics are selling, which is an entertainment medium, it just produces more money for the economy. Don't want to get too much into that kind of talk, but comics are up, and that is good, is what I'm trying to say. So, moving on from comic news, we're going to get into the movies. Movie news. Now, there just a little sidebar here. There may be some comic-related movie stuff coming out later when I get into this movie stuff, but I want to do the movie news separate from the comic news as far as comic movies go, because it's movies. Let's face it. We'll get into them later. Top 10 movies of the weekend. Number 10, Promised Land, opened 2 weeks ago, or 2 Fridays ago, if you want to look at it like that, on about 20 screens, expanded this week, was in the number 10 spot, made $4 million. Guilt Trip slipped from 8 to 9 with $4.4 million. Lincoln slips from 7th to 8th at $5.4 million. This Is 40 slipped from 6th to 7th at $8.3 million. Jack Reacher falls from 5 to 6 at $9.1 million. Parental Guidance falls from 4 to 5 for $9.7 million. Les Mis falls from 3 to 4, another $16 million for that. I went and seen this one this past weekend, and fantastic movie, absolutely incredible. I loved it. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you do. It's an amazing film. Falling from the number 1 spot this week, number 3, The Hobbit. Hobbit dropped 2 spots this week and raked in another $17.5 million. Holiday movies now start to decline, and that's why I think we see this little bit of a drop. That's not to say it's a bad movie. It's already had the number 1 spot for a few weeks now, so it was time for it to bow down. However, the bow down shocked me, because coming in at number 2 was Django Unchained with $20 million. Also a great film, Quentin Tarantino at his best, amazing, except for his Australian accent. If you seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Other than that, the movie's fantastic. I think even the accent made it funny. So, I mean, it's just a great movie. Jamie Foxx was awesome. And the guy I want to tout the most from this movie, Christoph Waltz. Haven't seen him in much. Most of the stuff I've seen him in, he's played a bad guy. This man was absolutely phenomenal in Django Unchained. Yes, Django Unchained, D is silent. Go see it if you haven't seen it already, because it's a fantastic movie. If I'd seen it before last week, it probably would have been in my top 10 movies of 2012, because it is a 2012 movie, as is Les Mis. They might have cracked the top 10. Definitely go see these movies. They're both fantastic movies. But number 1, last week I said that this movie, how could we have any more of this movie? Have they been outdone it? But apparently not, because the people came out in, well, not droves, but to the tune of $21.7 million. Texas Chainsaw 3D. They've taken off the massacre because of all the shootings that have gone on in the States, so because it's an American film, they take off the massacre. We all know it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's just called, for the purposes of this broadcast and for the purposes of everything else, the movie is now officially titled Texas Chainsaw 3D, so that's what it is called. Now, this movie, I have not seen it yet. I'm not sure if I will see it. However, I have been informed that it is very well done, and it's basically the sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw. And what I'm saying is, this movie picks up almost exactly where the first original Texas Chainsaw ended. That means that even like things like the cracked window you see in the house, everything from the original in I believe is I can't remember the exact date. I think it was not the exact date, but the exact year. I think it was in '74. The original came out. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie picks up right where that one left off. Forget all the sequels, forget all the remakes. If you just watch the original and this one, apparently that makes everything amazing. Don't know how the 3D was, but I do know that this movie is in 3D, which definitely brings up the monetary totals a little bit. But still, it was the number 1 movie this weekend. I think that will not stay the same next weekend when we have a few new releases coming out. We have Zero Dark 30, which is an expanded release because it is already in about 60 screens right now, apparently. So I mean, it's in theaters, just not very wide base. So they'll be expanding. Zero Dark 30 is the movie that about CIA agents who plotted the assassination, or I don't know what you call it, the killing of Osama bin Laden. This is the CIA operation, the SEAL Team 6, all that kind of stuff. So that's what Zero Dark 30 is about. That gets released this week. Also, Gangster Squad, a movie I'm very excited to see, gets released this week. I was a huge fan of The Untouchables. This definitely throws me back there. You add in Emma Stone and Sean Penn and Josh Brolin, and I mean, you've got definitely a great cast, and this movie should be fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing Gangster Squad. Don't know when I'll get to see it, but I'm definitely looking forward to see it. The other movie kind of getting a limited release this week that looks kind of interesting, especially for our older generations out there. Quartet. It has Maggie Smith. It has Billy Connolly. I'm forgetting a few names just because I don't have the window open, but definitely Quartet is going to be competing for one of those top 10 spots, probably near the bottom part of those top 10 spots. But Gangster Squad and Zero Dark 30 are probably going to be fighting for that number one spot to knock Texas Chainsaw 3D out of there. And then we'll see what happens next week. So that's the top 10. Now into movie news. First thing I want to talk about is Resident Evil. No, sorry, not Resident Evil. Evil Dead. Evil Dead is being remade, and as much as I'm not a fan of remakes, this one looks absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. This remake is approved by everybody involved with the original. It is not going to be a scene-for-scene shot. It is not completely a remake in that sense. They are getting rid of the Ash character because they didn't want an official Ash character, and this item alone is the reason Bruce Campbell is on board. Bruce Campbell, of course, made Ash famous in the original Evil Dead series, Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. Ash is not an official character, so do not go into this movie expecting to see a scene-for-scene shot of Evil Dead. If you do, you will be disappointed. That being said, this movie looks amazing. Absolutely, completely amazing. It's not being made as a campy horror. It is being made as a direct horror, scary movie. The trailers for this look phenomenal. An article was written this past week, and I just want to get some snippets out of it here. The new director is a guy, I'm not probably going to pronounce his first name right, Fede, F-E-D-E, Alvarez. He's been working with Sam Raimi, who is producing, Rob Tappert, who's also producing, and Bruce Campbell, who's also producing. So we have 3 original Evil Dead people producing this film that with this new director, and he's cast a very new sort of young and up-and-coming cast, so that none of these names are going to be kind of like, oh, I'm going to see it because that person's in it. No, this is going to be a very low-key cast, which will allow the story to be developed better. So the cast of this is Lou Taylor Pucci, who did a movie called Carriers. Jane Levy, who played in Suburgatory. She was also recently in I can't even think of the name of it, so I'm just not going to bother. But she's new and up-and-comer. Shiloh Fernandez is going to be in it. Jessica Lucas from Cloverfield. And Elizabeth Blackmore. The only one of this cast who's actually seen the original was Lou Taylor Pucci. So that means they don't have any bias. They're not going to try and act like the other characters that you've seen in the past. Lou made a statement, and I'm just going to read it here. I think, as far as fans of the original film, half of them are going to love it, and half of them are going to hate it. So they're going to talk about it. It takes some of the best things from the old film and brings some totally new ideas. You don't care anything about those original characters at all. Some people love that you don't, and some people would rather follow an actual story. That's what this is. It's got something for the original audience and something for the new audience. So that's a great quote, because that's basically saying, look, we are taking elements from the original film, stuff that people really liked and we know needs to be in there to make a great Evil Dead movie. However, we're also adding some new elements. We're not having the Ash character be in there because that is something we want to change. We're going to bring in some new ideas. This is going to be... it's definitely going to be my April movie. I am so happy because my girlfriend comes back from Ireland to visit me again the week before this movie comes out. We will be going to see this movie because we're both very excited to see it. It's going to be absolutely crazy. Now, one of the things I want to mention that this article points out, and I thought was absolutely fantastic, because I love when movies of this day and age do this. There will be no CGI. That's right, nothing will be CGI. There is going to be gallons of stage blood used. They've already used much because they've filmed most of this already. They're trying to avoid the NC-17 rating, which is the American rating system, which would be here in Canada, would be the hard R rating, which means nobody under 18 goes to see the movie. They're trying to avoid that, so they're looking for the American R, which is the Canadian 18A rating, basically stating you must be 18 years of age or older to see this movie, or accompanied by an adult who is of 18 years of age or older to see this movie. I think that's more the rating they're shooting for, and they're trying to do that as best as possible because this movie absolutely looks fantastic. Here's what the quote from Alvarez, the director, says. The effects are 95% practical. We are not doing any CGI. The other 5% are real post-effects. For example, there's going to be a scene of fire, but on the scene there will be no fire. So they're going to film a scene of just fire, and then they're going to film the scene with the actors. Then when they when they do the editing in post, they put the fire and that one scene together because, well, they don't want to kill the actors. And here's what he goes on to say. We don't do CG blood. Everything that we do is real. It's practical. Sometimes a post effect will just mean that you put two real things together. So like I said, they're going to film one scene with just the fire, one scene with the actors, meld the two scenes together so it looks like the actors are either on fire or in a room that's on fire or whatever is being used in this particular thing he was talking about. As far as the blood, obviously he's not talking real blood, but he's talking stage blood. It's not going to be CGI blood. It's going to be actually fluid going on. And if anybody has seen these trailers, there's a scene where in the trailer where she's being doused in blood from, it looks like almost like a scene of Exorcist. She's just spewing blood everywhere. That's going to be something going on there. Now, the one thing they couldn't do was call the book the Necronomicon. This is because of copyright issues. There's actually somebody out there who owns the copyright to Necronomicon, and they cannot use it. So, we're assuming, and this is just an assumption at this point, they're probably and most likely going to call the book of the Dead, which is basically what the Necronomicon means. Now, some fans might cry foul on this, but you can only do so much. The freaking name is copyright written. If you can't afford to pay for the copyright rights, especially when you're trying to keep a budget down, I mean, obviously no CGI keeps the budget down, no big star keeps the budget down. When you're trying to make a remake of a low-budget film as it is, you can't use a title or name or anything that's copywritten because you can't afford to pay for the copyright. So instead, calling it the Book of the Dead, while it means exactly the same thing, may upset some fans. To those fans, I say, grow up. Seriously. It's the Book of the Dead. We all know it's the Book of the Dead, and basically, you can call it the Necronomicon if you want. If that makes you feel better. So, I'm looking forward to this, and that's it for the Evil Dead rant, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to move on to more movie news. JGL, as I like to call him, or Joseph Gordon-Levitt, if you don't know who I'm talking about, has officially joined the Sin City A Dame to Kill For cast. Now, this will squash any rumors of him doing Guardians of the Galaxy, because it was rumored last week that he might be in that one. But no, he has joined the cast of Sin City A Dame to Kill For. He's going to be playing a character named Johnny. Now, the actual storyline for A Dame to Kill For has no character named Johnny. But as we know with the first Sin City, it was a mixture of Frank Miller's kind of like miniseries or works in general, and we're going to probably see different stories again in this one. The story that there is a Johnny character is from a short called Daddy's Little Girl, and it's possibly, for those of you wondering, that was in the Booze, Broads, and Bullets collection. That's possibly where the Johnny character is coming from, and it could be the same character. We're not sure yet. That's just what we know, is that he's playing a character named Johnny. Now, so far, Joseph JGL, as I like to call him, joins Mickey Rourke, Jessica Alba, Rosario Dawson, Jamie King, Jamie Chung, Dennis Haysbert, Bruce Willis, and Clive Owen, who are both back reprising their roles. And they're all reprising their roles, all the ones that are named who were in the original. So this is kind of big because it squashes the rumor that he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's also really cool because Sin City was such a fantastic film. It's been so long since that one that I am very excited to see this summer. I'm definitely going to be seeing Sin City 2. A Dame to Kill For, whatever you want to call it, subtitle. I am looking forward to this movie, and JGL just adds to it so much. Also, Guillermo del Toro confirms DC Comics project Dark Universe. Basically, what this is Justice League Dark, so to speak. It's the title of the movie is going to be called Dark Universe, and here's what Toro has to say. I'm working on it. I'm writing the outline, and we're already in talks with a writer, a very, very good writer. People are probably going to be happy with who we have chosen. He accepted. I've been courting this writer who I think is the perfect guy for this job. We're doing it. Hopefully it'll happen. The director hints that the lineup's going to be, or it will include possibly these names: Swamp Thing, the Demon, John Constantine, Deadman, the Spectre, and the father-daughter pair of Zatara and Zatanna. For those of you who don't know, this is an ensemble group that features supernatural characters. That's why when I say Justice League Dark, it's not you're thinking Justice League, you're thinking Superman, Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman. That's what you're thinking of, but it's not. It's the characters that I just named for you. Del Toro goes on to say this movement for this happened before the Avengers. They were already galvanized to launch Justice League, and they were galvanized to make their universe cohesive. They are really, really with Superman, very, very confident with what they have. They're now feeling they have two pillars, Batman and Superman. There's a foundation now, and they can build on it. To that I say, wait and see. It's nice to say that you want to do the Justice League Dark. It's nice to say that you want to do a Justice League movie because they still tentatively have it planned for 2015 to have the Justice League movie. It's hard to kind of visualize that when you haven't set us up. You've finished Batman. We all know that Christian Bale is never coming back to do Batman again. You're just starting Superman all over again with a new Superman, and you're hoping that it does well. June 14th, I believe, is the release date for that, so we'll find out this summer. But you expect us to believe that you're going to make a Justice League movie that's kind of going to stand alone? It's hard to swallow. I'm not saying you have to reboot Batman, but you have to do something to kind of lead us into this movie. If Man of Steel is your only film to lead into a Justice League movie, I'm not going to say it's going to flop, but will it do Avengers money? Absolutely not. It's not even going to come close to doing Avengers money. You've got to build us into it. And we'll just have to see where it goes. As for this Dark Universe project, interesting. I'm intrigued. Guillermo del Toro is a great director. I'm interested to see where this is going. Okay, this next bit of movie news is kind of really cool, and at the same time really sad. Okay, just near the end of December, a lifelong Trekkie fan named Dan, and that's all I'm going to reveal at this point, although I will reveal his name in a minute, went to see The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey to see the 9-minute Star Trek Into Darkness feature that played on the IMAX screens. I talked about that when Hobbit was coming out, that the IMAX version was going to have a 9-minute Star Trek intro Star Trek Into Darkness intro as part of the trailer package. But unfortunately, the show they went and seen did not have it. Not long after this, Dan, who has cancer, not only cancer, but diagnosed with 2 forms of cancer, was told he would only have weeks to live. So Dan's wife wrote, I think it was on Reddit.com. Hi everyone, it's Daniel's wife. We are of course sworn to secrecy. I shouldn't read that first. I should read this first. Dan's wife went online to possibly find out where that... Basically, I'm not going to read it because it's just a lot of talk. And basically what was asked was she almost basically begged J.J. Abrams to see... Well, not begged J.J. Abrams, but was basically telling to her friends that she didn't want to... She wanted her husband to see this part before he died. And this got to J.J. Abrams, and there was a thread on Reddit, and it just kept going back and forth. The community saw this, and people, friends and family started reaching out to the Star Trek community. Started, I guess, tweets, posts on Reddit.com, and a day or so after the thread began, Paige, who's Dan's wife, got a voicemail from J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindorf that was very nice and very straightforward. A producer for the movie would get in touch with them. The next day, one of the film's producers showed up at the door of their apartment with a DVD containing a very rough cut of Star Trek Into Darkness in his hands. Paige had made popcorn. Dan had spent the previous day resting so he could sit through the movie, and after signing about 200 non-disclosure agreements, they watched the film and had a blast. Basically, J.J. Abrams took this opportunity to grant a dying man's wish, a Star Trek fan's wish. Dan was dying. He was never gonna make it to the May release. So J.J. Abrams decided to get one of his producers to go to this man's house with a rough cut of the movie. So obviously not the finished product, but a rough cut, which means the movie in full, just without maybe some of the edits and some of the posts and some of the little things that make the movie a movie. And this man and his wife got to sit there and watch this movie together. This is what I was reading earlier that I said I better stop. Hi everyone, it's Daniel's wife. We are of course sworn to secrecy, but we are officially allowed to say we saw it and we enjoyed it immensely as a film and as a gesture. We were so touched when Abrams was concerned that we wouldn't 100% enjoy the screening as it's still being worked on. Be assured, we enjoyed it 110%. She goes on to thank everybody involved in this. Especially during the holiday season. This is a story of us giving something to him, the internet community giving something to him, and ultimately being a heartwarming gift to our friends, family, and so many others. This story of us, and of course J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, being able to give this surprise gift of a screening to a huge movie buff like Daniel, especially a film made by a filmmaker who obviously makes movies with such care with a fan like Daniel in mind. Now, here's the sad part. Daniel has since passed. He got to see the film, yes. They enjoyed it, yes, but he has now passed away. This little snippet comes from GiantFreakingRobot.com, not a sponsor, by the way. It appears that Daniel Kraft was not only a Star Trek fan and movie buff, he was one of the directors and founders of the New York Asian Film Festival. He was responsible for bringing awareness to Asian movie stars such as Jackie Chan and Jet Li in the United States. He was also an extra in Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill Volume 1 because of his work in the Asian film market. Hendricks also noted that his friend wouldn't feel comfortable with all this attention on his cancer story. He thought it would be silly to remember it in this way. Dan would be rolling his eyes at being the inspirational cancer story, but he's done a lot for movies over the years, said Hendricks. It's nice that the movies finally did something for him. It's still tragic to hear of anyone dying at such a young age. By the way, he was 41. But we're just thankful that the internet worked a little magic and Abrams and Lindolf came through to give the story a happy ending, even if only a minor one. So unfortunately, he did pass away from the cancer. It's sad that he passed away, but he died last Friday at the age of 41. But at 41, to be dead of such a disease. We always hope that we can find cures for these things and maybe do something about it. But I am so thankful to be part of the internet, part of being a Trek fan, and J.J. Abrams' amazing ability to show this movie to a man who was not going to live long enough to see it in theaters. And it's just such a great story, I had to share it. Okay, this next part is a spoiler. If you have not seen the movie Les Mis, well, I'm going to spoil it for you. I read this from a posting from Facebook, and I just had to share it with you. It may have already been shared with you numerous times, but I have to read it because it's hilarious and almost very accurate. It says, Les Miserables, review by Sam Richardson. Sam, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry for reading this, but it was absolutely crazy good. Went to the movies with the wife. We saw this obscure movie I had never heard of, some French foreign film. They must have been giving away free tickets because the lines were out the door. Anyway, the movie starts and Wolverine is singing his guts out. Then Catwoman starts crying and singing, and it's all very moving. The only problem was the girl next to me who had apparently read the book or something starts singing along. It was very distracting. So, Wolverine is on the run from the Gladiator because Catwoman had a baby at Borat's house, but now she wants Wolverine to care for her. Time skip, a bunch of kids get shot, and in the end everyone dies. 4 stars. Great review, Sam, because that is just absolutely hilarious. As we all know, anybody who knows movies knows, Hugh Jackman played Wolverine, he is in this movie. Anne Hathaway played Catwoman, she is in this movie. Russell Crowe played the Gladiator, he's in this movie, and Sacha Baron Cohen played Borat, and he's in this movie. So, you take that all into account, this is such a great write-up, absolutely hilarious, and like I said, quite accurate of what happens in the movie. Again, though, if you get a chance, go see this film. It is, by all means, one of the greatest films that I have seen in a long time, and it was just fantastic. I am so happy that I got to see it, because, especially on the big screen, it doesn't necessarily need to be on the big screen, but it was just that good that I couldn't have, I'd be remiss if I missed it. Alright, comic and movie news done. On to sports specifically. We're going to move to the NFL. Last week I made my predictions of who would win this week's games. And guess what, everybody? I went 4 for 4. I predicted every single winner. Even though I said that some games were going to be close and they weren't, I still got the winners right, and that's what was important. So moving on in the NFL playoffs, Houston defeated Cincinnati 19-13. Baltimore crushed Indianapolis 24-9. Seattle defeated Washington 24-14. And Green Bay beat up on Minnesota 24-10. Now, I just want to talk about some of these games for a second. Baltimore, I knew was going to win. They had Ray Lewis coming back. That's inspiration right there. I think Indianapolis played a poor game. Andrew Luck did not have one of his best games. Now, granted, it was his first postseason appearance, but I think I expected a much closer game in this than there was. Unfortunately, Baltimore's defense showed up. Moving to the other AFC game, the Houston Texans should have crushed Cincinnati. That's my opinion. However, their defense has been poor, so I was actually expecting a close game in this one. It was 19-13, which was a close game, but the way Cincinnati played, Houston should have been dominating that game from start to finish, but I think there was too many problems on the offensive line that Schaub couldn't have a better game than he did. I know Arian Foster got a touchdown, but that was it. One touchdown in this game was scored by Houston. There should have been a couple more, at least, probably. But Houston does move on. However, they have to face the Patriots next, and that's not good. In the NFC, Seattle defeating Washington. I expected it, even though Washington was at home. All the other winners were at home, but the problem was Washington was playing a very tough defensive team. Plus, you had Marshawn Lynch in, who's just a beast. He's got that nickname for a reason. He's a beast. Washington jumped out to a 14-0 lead, and then RG3 was just not RG3. He had his weak knee from the injury earlier in the year, and eventually he even left the game because he couldn't continue. It was just too much. And now, after MRI results, it looks like he has a partial tear of the LCL and the MCL, which means he's going to probably require surgery, which means he might not even be ready for the start of next season. Did the coach make the wrong move? Some people will say yes. Some people will say no. I don't know if the coach made the right move. Apparently, he talked to RG3. RG3 said he was good to go. Coach said, all right. You can't do a lot during the game as far as taking tests to find out if a player is ready to go. He said he was ready to go. Coach kept him in. Maybe it was a bad decision. Maybe it wasn't. You don't want to hurt your franchise player because this guy's going to be a quarterback for a very long time. But if he starts getting knee injuries, half of his game goes away. Part of what makes RG3 is the fact that he's very mobile. You start fucking with the knees, you start doing the surgery on the knees, and that's going to be the end of that. He's going to have to be a pocket passer, and maybe that's not his style, and maybe he doesn't become the quarterback that he could be. So you have to weigh things. It is a playoff game. A lot of people got mad at Cutler a few years ago when he came out and didn't come back, and it appeared that he probably could have played. So it's hard to go back and forth like that. So it'll have to remain to be seen what this entails for Washington in the future. Seattle, in the meantime, looked pretty dominant after dropping down 14-0. They never gave up. They came back. They outscored Washington 24-0 in the final three quarters after being down 14-0 in the first. They are a very dominant team. The Falcons better look out next week. And in the other NFC game, we had Green Bay versus Minnesota. Now, this game I expected to be close. The reason it wasn't, Minnesota did not have a quarterback. What I mean by that is they lost Christian Ponder, who, while isn't a very good quarterback, is a much better quarterback than Webb, who started and passed maybe 3 times all year and had to start the playoff game. He looked terrible. They had an opening drive, which was very good. I believe they got a field goal out of their opening drive, or I'm just going to try and see if I can find it here. The opening drive was really good, but it was a lot of running. It was a field goal. There was a lot of running plays, and he looked very comfortable handing the ball off to Adrian Peterson. He looked very comfortable rolling out of the pocket and taking off down the field. He got a few rushing yards himself. But after that, when they made him pass, and the first pass he throws falls about 5 yards short of his receiver, well, Green Bay stacked the box all day. They stopped all day Adrian Peterson. He only had 99 yards, which is impressive considering how good Green Bay was, how tight on him Green Bay was playing. But at the same time, he's rushed for over 400 yards against the Green Bay Packers this year. To be held to 99 is a little bit low. Also, they only scored 1 touchdown. That's never going to do it against Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers looked all right. Now, did Green Bay look dominating? No. Did they win the game? Yes. They travel to San Francisco next week. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback. San Francisco's a good team. So, let's get right to my predictions. San Francisco hosting the Packers. I'm going to have to go with San Francisco on this. They have 2 number 1 quarterbacks. They have a great running back in Frank Gore. They have one of the best defenses in the entire league. I see this to be a great game, but I'm picking the 49ers to beat the Green Bay Packers. The other Saturday game is Baltimore versus the Broncos. Now, Baltimore had the emotional edge when they hosted the Indianapolis Colts last week, but this week they are traveling to Denver, and as we all know from my previous shows, I'm picking Denver to win the Super Bowl, so I'm picking Denver to win this game. I think Peyton Manning tears up that weak Baltimore defense. I think they were inspired last week. I think they're going to be back to the way they were for the last 4 or 5 games of the season. I think Peyton Manning's going to come out. He's going to throw the ball like he does. He's got some running backs this year that have done well. Moreno's done all right. McGahee's done all right. So, I mean, he's got a solid team there, and Denver's also ranked pretty high on the defense. So, I expect this game to be pretty much a Denver-dominated game. I expect to see probably some gap in the score. I don't expect this to be close, very close, because I don't like the Ravens' chances offensively. Flacco, as good as he was in the last game, he's not playing Indianapolis this week. and they're not playing at home this week. So I'm picking the Denver Broncos to win that game. Moving on to the Sunday games, we have the Seattle Seahawks against the Atlanta Falcons. As I said, the Seahawks looked really good against Washington, and this is going to be a tough one to decide. Atlanta has a history of choking in the playoffs. They play really well in the regular season. Matt Ryan does extremely well in the regular season. He's a pretty decent quarterback in the regular season. He has never won a playoff game. And that being said, Russell Wilson's only won one, but that's one more than Matt Ryan. So, can the Seattle defense and Marshawn Lynch go beast mode over the Falcons? This is one guy who thinks they can. I'm picking the Seahawks over the Falcons. That's right. Even though the Falcons are at home, they've had the week off, I think Seattle's the better team here. I think Seattle will actually beat the Falcons this coming Sunday. The other game, I think I pretty much gave you my choice. The Texans travel to New England. I hate the New England Patriots. I freaking hate Tom Brady. I really loathe their coach. However, they are going to tear apart the Texans. The Texans' defense has not been great. They did not dominate a Cincinnati team that they should have, especially when Andy Dalton did nothing. They are going into New England in the winter to face a team that can put up 50 points on you, no problem. I believe when they faced the Texans in the regular season, they beat them 44-10. Look for much of the same this coming week. So that's the Patriots advancing, the Seahawks advancing, the 49ers advancing, and the Broncos advancing, according to me. That may not be your opinion, but that is mine. Moving on from NFL to the NHL. And I am happy to report the NHL is back. That's right, I said that they would never have a season, and they proved me wrong. It proves that anybody could be wrong. Because the NHL has ratified, they haven't ratified, sorry. No. They've got a framework for an agreement that's going to go through ratification on Wednesday with the owners and over the next couple of days with the players. Now, you'll be listening to this on Wednesday, so by then we might know more information. But I am recording it on Monday, so remember that I'm recording this on Monday, so what information I give now might change a little, but it looks like it'll be ratified by the owners on Wednesday, and then throughout the next couple of days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it'll be ratified by the players. It looks like training camps are going to open up on Saturday, the 12th, and the season will start the following Saturday, the 19th, with a proposed 48-game schedule, which is much like we saw in 1994-95 when the New Jersey Devils won their cup. A lot of people say it was tainted, but you know what? 48 games is still more than half the season. The playoffs are full. They don't shorten the playoffs, so it's a sprint. It's instead of a marathon, it's a sprint. And the teams that get hot quick are going to be the teams that are going to win. Now, as a Leafs fan, I look at the first 50 games last year. The Leafs were one of the best teams in the league. They were number 2 in their division, and I believe they were about 5th in the conference. So for me, I'm looking at a start like that for my team, and maybe they can make the playoffs this year. That being said, we'll have to wait and see how things go. Injuries happen on a shortened season. Players that have been playing already 40 games across the pond there over in Russia and Slovakia and Sweden and stuff like that in the KHL, the Swedish Elite Leagues, the Czech leagues. Those players will be ready, but they'll also have played more. I know there's a couple of players who got injured over there who will actually miss time with their pro teams just because of the injuries. Then there's the players who didn't do anything, who are now getting back into game shape and preparing for a 48-game schedule, and now have to work around different things like groin pulls are usually the most common injuries in a shortened season like this. So look for some injuries to happen and other players to step up. I know for some teams their AHL affiliates have had their players. So again, hopefully the players are working out. Hopefully the players aren't going to come in too out of game shape. But there are going to be those who do. So look for injuries in this shortened season. Now, I just want to go over the details that I do know about the agreement. Dating back to what I was saying earlier, the deal is going to be 10 years. So this CBA is 10 years long with an option for an opt-out after 8 years. So hopefully we have 10 years of hockey before we get another lockout from Gary fucking Bettman. It's also reported that it's going to be the limit on the contracts for players is 7 years, unless a player re-signs with their existing team. Then it can be for 8 years. So this is going to be a good advantage for players who get an offer sheet that says 7 years, and then their team comes back. Well, we'll do this, but we'll give you 8 years. So it's kind of making it nicer for the lower market teams to kind of like offer more to their players. So I think that's good for like smaller market teams. That being said, I think I said this before when I said that why don't they do something like this? They do need to limit contracts instead of giving players these 25-year contracts and everything. But how do you do it and still make it competitive? Is I think the word I'm looking for. Well, you do it like this. You say, okay, well, the most you can sign a player for is 7 years, which is fine. A lot of GMs, and specifically I'm thinking Brian Burke, because I know the Leafs more than anything. Brian Burke doesn't like to sign huge, long 13-year contracts. His most common is a 5-year deal. That being said, I guarantee you that if he could keep a player, he'll sign that player for 8 years if he knows that that player is worth it. I didn't get reports on how the money's going to have to break down to avoid salary cap. I don't know what you would call it, salary cap. Well, basically circumventing. That's the word, circumventing the salary cap. I don't know how that's going to have to break down. I'm sure there's some stipulations in there. Again, we only have some details because they wanted to release the details to like the owners and the players before they released it publicly. But that's definitely something they are going to have to do. Additionally, the reports say the sides agreed on a salary cap of $64.3 million for the 2013-2014 season, with the floor resting at $44 million. This season, the cap will reportedly be at $70.2 million. To be able to meet the reduced cap number in 2013-2014, each team will be allowed the option of 2 compliance buyouts before the start of that season. That's according to reports. The buyout money does not count against the salary cap of the team buying out the player, but rather counted against the player's share of hockey-related revenue. Basically, what that little report is saying is that this year, for the shortened season, teams can spend up to $70.2 million for their teams. This is mostly because there's a lot of teams in that $60 million range already that only have 14 players signed. Well, you need to sign more players, otherwise you're not going to have a team. So they need some wiggle room to sign some of those kind of roster spot players to fill out their teams. And then they're going to get an option at the end of this year, before next year, to buy out up to 2 players to basically reduce their salary cap. Basically, your top tier players who are making tons and tons of cash might get bought out. They'll be able to buy out these players and re-sign them to a new contract that will work with a $64.3 million cap. Now, as we quite recently saw in the last 8 years, that cap did go up according to revenue. So, with them agreeing to drop the cap by almost $6 million, it looks like that they're going to start at 64 being the cap, and they'll go from there to see if it goes up and what happens to it. Now remember, the cap is reflective of revenue, so if revenue goes up, the cap goes up. If revenue goes down, the cap goes down, and teams are going to have to become compliant. This option to buy out is only for the 2013-2014 season, which means if you're at the cap at $64 million, let's say your cap for 2013-2014 is $64 million, but your players are now getting their raises for the next year of their contract, you might not be able to re-sign the players you want because you don't have the room. You're either going to have to trade players, you're going to have to renegotiate contracts. So this is almost like, well, he said it before, but this is really almost idiot-proof contracting. There's going to have to be some checks and balances in order for teams to comply with these new rules. And that's, again, all related to hockey-related revenue. So, That being said, I'm happy that NHL hockey's back. I'm looking forward to the start of the season. It looks like it's going to be approximately 10 to 12 days away. Well, they say the 19th. The puck's dropping on the 19th. So looks like 10 days from when you hear this, 12 days from when I'm recording this, there will be NHL hockey back on the screens, back on the ice, playing where they belong, and I am definitely happy that hockey's back. Don't mind being proved wrong when it's something like this, because let's face it, I was dead set on there being no season. I really thought that they weren't going to come to an agreement, but I am so happy they did. So with that bit of great news, I'm going to say good night, everybody, or good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this. But that's the end of this show for the Warlock Hour, Warlock Wednesdays. Don't forget, on anotherpodcast.com, that's EHNOTHER podcast.com. Also find us on iTunes under Another Podcast. So that'll be it for me. I'm definitely going to have a good night knowing that NHL is going to be coming back. Good night, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast, anotherpodcast.com. It's where you can find your network. This is a network now. Mondays is Another Podcast. Tuesdays, Real Music with OJ and myself. Wednesdays is Warlock Wednesdays with Ray. We're starting off, we're going good, so we need you to participate. Yes, you can email anotherpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us in any questions that you would like us to answer, things to talk about on another podcast or Real Music, or I can forward them on to Ray for Warlock Wednesdays. Also, there's a YouTube channel, Another Podcast on YouTube. You just look up Another Podcast. There's some videos uploaded already. We're hoping to go strong with that and some other projects we have on the go. So we are trying to build a network. We're trying to go 7 days a week. So Sundays is already taking. It will be starting up soon. Comics with Mikey, I think I'm going to call it. Comics with Mikey. And then that won't necessarily be a podcast. It's going to be an actual comic strip that you can go and read on Sundays. So we need 4 other shows: Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Wait, that's 3. Yeah, we only need 3. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we need some independent podcasters out there who want to podcast for free. Yeah, that's right. Free. That's what I'm doing for you. I'm going to host it. I'm paying for it. I want to get my money's worth out of what I've paid for. So if you are Canadian, that's the one rule. Maybe we'll do one import. Just like the Canadian Football League, we'll have an import player. So, but I'll work that out later. So if you want to podcast once a week for free, anotherpodcast@gmail.com. Email me, hit me up, and we will work on it. I'll get you the details. Try to talk you through what I know, which is limited. No, it's not that bad. And we'll make it easy for you. Things are going good. The website's getting hits. I love it. I love you for listening to it. If I can speak plain English today. Thanks for listening. anotherpodcast.com. Another Podcast on Twitter. So you just go Another Podcast. And you can also follow me at The Real APOC on Twitter. So thanks for listening. Come back every day for more. Thank you very much. Bye.